when I speak on Camp Lejeune is how they ruined my life, and that's in every interview.
Mm-hmm.
Every interview, they ruined my life. They did. These people really did some real jacked up stuff to us, and there's so many dead. The baby heaven is the one that's the
So
worst.
then once I went to finish the basic training there at Paris Island, and then I had orders to go to Camp Lejeune.
How long did you serve there?
I was at Courthouse Base Bay. That was where the Amtrakers was. Okay, I was stationed there. I went to school. I was a personnel administrative clerk. I went to school in Camp Johnson, so I was a 0151, what you call personnel.
Mm-hmm.
So I pretty much was all over the base.
Okay. So they said the water was contaminated as well as some other things at Camp Lejeune.
Well, I didn't notice a smell, but I noticed some kind of odor when I got there. And this is a weird odor, but people say they can't see, touch, taste, and smell, but I don't
Was
know
the
about
odor
that.
outside? Was it inside?
It was inside the base itself, period. It
Okay.
was a bad odor inside of there.
Did anybody ever complain about the odor?
You know what? Let me start by saying I didn't hear anybody complaining because you know when you're in the Marine Corps you're 100% compliance. If you're not 100% compliance, then you know they can make it really tough for you. So yes, I heard some people sometimes, man, Bernard, do you hear you smell that water? You smell this or you smell that? And some yes they did complain, but then no one mentioned it to the higher ups because that would have been devastating for all of us.
So you guys drank the water as well?
Yeah, I drank the water. I bathed in the water. I was everywhere. You drink the water, and I didn't notice anything wrong at the time. Yeah, we just did what we was told as Marines, and we had to do what we had to do.
How long had you been stationed there?
I had been stationed there, well, let's see, I got there 30 days right after I had leave time, and I got there about right 30 days after I got out, so that's around 84, 85.
Okay. And so, did you start getting sick right away? When did you notice
No.
you weren't feeling well?
Well, I was a personnel administrator, so I was a typist. I was very good. So I said, well, ain't nothing wrong with me. It didn't happen right then. I was so good at my base, at the base at Camp Johnson, where they trained personnel administrative clerk, that I was stationed to Washington, D.C. It showed up there. It didn't show up initially.
How many years after you had left?
It wasn't years. It wasn't years. It was a matter of months. I went from being the sharp shooting Marine to they couldn't understand why I was acting erotic, acting the way that I was acting.
So do you think the military knew that they were poisoning our veterans?
I think after all of this has been said and done, I think the military would have known that this water was contaminated. I do. I really do.
I mean, because the higher ups had to ask the same questions you guys were asking.
So I've been behind the scene with the Camp Lejeune water contamination. It's some very nasty disease, and it's awful. It's awful.
What have you felt like, and what type of ailments have you received as a result of drinking the water?
I was diagnosed 2 years ago with prostate cancer. So I went and I had an MRI done and a CAT scan done, and it didn't catch it. He said, "Oh no, Bernard, we're not going to settle for this," the doctor said. He said that we're going for a biopsy. So I had to do a biopsy, and it came back positive for prostate cancer.
So this was your own independent doctor?
Independent doctor, yeah. From the VA, we do like community care that we can go outside of the VA and get services outside through this program called community care.
Mm-hmm. Back in 2012, there was legislation passed that specifically gave health care to veterans of Camp Lejeune.
Yes. President Obama signed the Jamie Enzimer Act, which Jerry Enzimer is the father of Janie, who died with childhood leukemia. He was a drill instructor charged in training Marines how to be Marines, and he found out that in the 90s that there was a poison at Camp Lejeune.
So that seemed like it would have been an admission of guilt. However, they were just providing health care to veterans, but not providing compensation back in that time.
We fought so long and so hard for them to even acknowledge that something was even wrong. But we found that out, and through a lot of science, through a lot of research at the ATSDR and the CDC under Pat Bricey, that they did studies along this, and they came up with 15 health effects that they thought would be critical for people who served at Lejeune and also their dependents as well.
So, do you think that they knew what was in the water? They knew what ailments it would cause the veterans, and then yet they backed up and said, "Hey, we're not going to do anything." That's why they hired those physicians to present in court that there's nothing wrong with these guys, and it's not as a result of them living on Camp Lejeune.
Well, I think it was more of a political battle between the Marines, but we served in the Marine, and we put our hands up to serve, so we do exactly what we told. It can be very hard for you if you don't do what you was told, but like I said, I think they knew from a standpoint that this water was, contaminated. But back then, if you said something back then in those days, they could make it really bad for you at that time.
I believe it.
So I did 39 rounds of radiation through Emory program. My PSA has come back 0 point something, which is nice. But I had the very aggressive form of prostate cancer. On top of that, they have what they call neurobehavior effect. I have tardive dyskinesia from taking psychotropic medicine for a number of years, about 37 years to be exact, ever since I left Camp Lejeune. We served in the Marines, and we're held to a high standard. And our government should be held even higher to know that we was poisoned by this water and the outright pour of veterans and the family members and the dependents. Not only did we serve, the dependents served. So they need to just do right about the people, about the veterans, about the family. And let's come to some kind of good conclusion about this, because people are literally dying.
I was sent to Camp Lejeune, where I was among the first. I was the first woman armorer there, first African American woman armorer at New River Air Station.
Did you feel like you were being poisoned?
Well, the one thing that stood out was the fact that when we turned the water on, you had to let it run 20, 30 minutes before it became clear. And it always had this little musty smell to it. So as women, we bathed in that water. We washed our hair in that water. We drank that water. And if you were living in housing or you had a barracks where you could cook, you cooked in that water.
So what about the higher ups? The colonels, the generals? Did they drink the same water?
I don't know if they lived in base housing, yes. If they used the water fountains on the base, yes. But there were times when we were out in formation that the senior officers were drinking bottled water. So,
did anybody complain about the taste of the water, the smell? Were there any complaints at all?
Let it run, is what you were told. Let it run.
And so even after it cleared up, it still had that taste and that smell to it, but it lost a lot of the cloudiness.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And you guys continued to drink it. You had no other choice.
We gave birth in that water.
Did any of the Marines complain about the water?
We complained about what we knew, which is why are certain things happening to us? Like, as for women, you kept chronic UTIs. They couldn't explain to us that there. The water was brown. There was nothing you could do unless you moved downtown. You get your clothes cleaned at the cleaners on Camp Lejeune, you itch. So other than that, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know we were poisoned. We just knew that the water was bad.
So did most of the Marines, did most of them start getting sick?
A lot of folks eventually, gradually over time, but you never knew what it was from.
Were families impacted?
Oh, yeah. I lost my mother. I have several friends who lost their mother. I lost my brother last year. He had renal kidney failure. And every hospital he went to here in Metro Atlanta could not tell him why his kidney shut down. Until I told him to tell them, you at Camp Lejeune with me.
And how did the water impact you personally?
Oh, 9 miscarriages, stillborn. I itch from the inside out. I have hematomas on my brain, old and new. Several different ways, mentally, emotionally, of course physically, because now you're dealing with a myriad of illnesses that there's really no cure for.
So in 2012, Congress passed legislation providing health care. So back then, Congress knew something was wrong.
Oh, they've been knowing. They knew it in the 90s. I believe they, as far back as the 70s and 80s, they had to. I worked in the armory. We didn't use masks or gloves. So you're messing with all them chemicals to clean the weapons and everything. So we're exposed. They knew. They knew then, and I have no doubt, I believe it, that they've known all along.
Yeah, because they hired doctors to actually fight against Marines who were trying to bring claims.
They did.
Why would we do our veterans that way?
Because they don't care about the veterans.
Well, in August of 2022, they passed the Camp Lejeune Justice Act.
Mm-hmm. Why is it that we're the only branch that has to hire an attorney to stand behind us? And the fact that most of these attorneys want 40%. Go back a little bit further. When we first found out and we went to these attorneys, oh, you can't sue the government. But yet here they are now. Everybody wants a piece of the pie, or 3/4 of the pie.
Yeah, they've already spent $1 billion on advertisement.
They probably spent more than that because they know they're going to recoup it. If you have 1 million plus survivors, veterans, and their dependents, and you're getting 40% from each of them.
Why wouldn't the government be responsible for paying all attorney fees?
They're not going to do it. They'll cap them. I do believe that they're going to cap them. I'm not sure how much.
I'm not sure if that would be a benefit either, though, because if you cap fees, you're not going to get the very best attorneys to represent you.
True.
If you don't have the very best, your chances of winning what you deserve.
Because they're going to hire lawyers to tear you apart when you stand up there to take your chance in front of the judge.
So what does this actual new legislation, what does it mean for veterans who served at Camp Lejeune?
It gives us a little semblance of hope, but until they actually compensate, there's just hope hanging in the balance.
So what do you think needs to be done?
As I've said in a lot of the past CAP meetings that we had, I think that the government should take all that money that they're putting aside for the PAC Act and grant those members that were there, they have some kind of disabilities from being there. There should be no homeless veterans. There should be no veterans trying to survive that's been poisoned. It's just so much, and I could go on and on, but the more I think about it, the madder I get, so we're going to leave it at that.
How long did you stay at Camp Lejeune? What year were you stationed there?
I was stationed at, first of all, Camp Johnson, which is a part of Camp Lejeune and was also contaminated. And I went there for motor transport school.
So you said Camp Johnson was contaminated as well?
Yes, it's a part of Camp Lejeune.
It is part of Camp Lejeune?
Yes.
Okay.
So there I learned the art of diesel mechanic, 3rd echelon, and I graduated, and they sent me to Camp Lejeune main side to the main motor pool, where most of the harshest contamination took place. As a mechanic, you have to use the different contaminating toxins, which were TCE and PCE, to clean the parts as well as the vehicles so that you could paint them and pack bearings and things of that nature. So we didn't use gloves. We didn't use any masks. We breathed it in. We had it in our skin. We walked through it. The water, we wore leather boots, which did not have any coating or anything on them to keep your feet from getting wet either. So by the time the end of the day was complete, your feet looked like you had been walking in water all day and all shriveled up. So we were contaminated from the head down.
Why didn't anyone know at that particular time that there was a possibility there could have been contamination in the water? Because, I mean, you had smell, you had taste. Nobody asked the question?
The questions were asked, but we were told to suck it up, as they do. And we had no choice but to suck it up. Do as you're told, and that's what we did. As Levita said, we signed a blank check and they cashed it at our expense.
What about the leadership? Did you notice them drinking the same water, taking baths in the same water?
Well, as far as the officers were concerned, they had bottled water, the big tanks, and you weren't allowed to even think about taking a cup and getting it. You had to drink out of your canteen, and we had these other tankers that carried water out into the field. That's what they drank. But the officers and the leaders, they had their own different waters. But our barracks were horrible.
Talk about that.
The water was awful. You had to turn it on, and when it came out, it was brown, and you would let it run until the odor would go away, which consumed you sometimes and made you ill to your stomach. But once the water ran clear, you were allowed to bathe in it. However, it was still an odor.
Why would they allow our veterans, specifically our Marines, to be subjected to dirty water?
It really surprised me during boot camp, as well as during our time at Camp Johnson and Camp Lejeune. Not just those, other bases as well, military and Marine bases, are contaminated too. Okinawa, I was at Roosevelt Rose in Puerto Rico, contaminated. And it was a Navy base. So I don't know. I really can't tell anyone the reasons why. I just know it ruined our lives.
Is that water still contaminated? Do
Yes.
you believe somebody treated it in a way where it would harm citizens or our veterans?
They purposely dumped tanks and drums of contaminants in the drinking water. I saw it happen with my own eyes. Not just them, but other companies came on the base and dropped chemicals into our drinking water as well.
Now, Crystal, I know you spoke up on
Oh my,
on the water.
yeah.
Can you tell us about that experience?
Well, we've been going from state to state over the last 15 years telling this story, and it seems like everybody had turned their backs to us, even when I wrote to 4 different presidents in regards to my illnesses and what was going on with me. Nothing.
And it wasn't just the veterans.
No.
It was also your families,
My family,
your kids,
my children, all the civilian workers. Anybody who worked on the base was contaminated. I lost my mother behind the contamination. Rare disease, they could never figure out what happened to her. I had my daughter Amber at the base. She's got issues. Her kids have issues. All my grandchildren have some type of issue, be it neural, physical, mental, medical.
I read I read something where it talked about the VA actually hiring experts to
Yes,
help deny claims.
and they did.
The VA is accountable for this.
Yes, they are. Those experts had a whole 30-minute class on how to deny us. They knew nothing. They know nothing whatsoever about the illnesses. Each and every time I get to a VA facility, the doctors change. I never have the same doctor except for one, my primary care. I've had her for the last 12 years. Anybody else, they're all new. They don't last.
Can you talk about the new legislation that was passed? Do you think that is going to go a long way in helping veterans who were poisoned at Camp Lejeune?
Yes, I believe it will. The PACT Act, as well as the Camp Lejeune Justice Act, both will help what has happened. We have never been able to personally sue the United States government until August of this year. We have that opportunity now. Take care of these veterans. We took care of the United States.
You sure did.
They didn't do anything for us but give us illnesses and deny us our benefits. I've been denied 7 times. How?
I don't
You
understand.
can't do that. We're
So
veterans.
why did it take the government so long to approve this legislation for our veterans?
It took, like I said, 25 years for us to even get to this point where we could do this. If it were not for Jerry Emsinger, who found out what happened at Camp Lejeune and found some documents that weren't supposed to be out there on the internet, we'd have never found out.
Have you found that in filing claims that African Americans are receiving different treatment than?
Most certainly. And it's been documented. Just recently, I posted something that came from the VA saying about how the African Americans are getting less than deserving when it comes to their benefits and how long it's taking for them to get their benefits. There's some people who's been waiting 30 years.
Why is it so difficult for African Americans to get their
I have
justice?
no idea. It's just so sad, and we are the largest of any people
Serving.
that serve. So I don't know. If I could answer that question, Bruce, I would be a millionaire. Just want to thank you
I want to thank you.
for bringing us and letting us tell our story. And I'm hoping one day that this is all resolved because it's really bad. It's a really bad, tragic situation. And our Marines did not deserve this at all. We didn't ask for it.